Aren't you guys just sick of old man Yowie? I mean, do we really need round 2 of this? Well, thank the Lord above for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Coming in at a perky 70 years old, this environmental lawyer is mean, green, and doesn't like no vaccines. He's here, and he thinks tap water makes your kids queer. Kennedy launched his campaign for the presidency last April after breaking with the Democratic Party over the summer. He's currently running as an independent. And for an independent, his polling is fairly well. Unlike Trump and Biden, his approval rating is not negative. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the son of former Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy and nephew of former President John F. Kennedy. He was 9 years old when his uncle was assassinated in Dallas during his first term, and 14 when his father was assassinated during his presidential campaign in 1968. Those traumatic experiences were what likely led to his drug use. From after his father's assassination to the mid-1980s, Kennedy was addicted to heroin. After getting clean, he would go on to become an environmental lawyer, working with the NRDC and other organizations for environmental protection. Additionally, he has worked with the NAACP fighting urban destruction in the Bronx. That is an extremely brief overview of his career because I would like to get into his current beliefs. The most pressing thing about RFK, according to the media, is his obsession with conspiracy theories. 5 noteworthy falsehoods Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has promoted. Anti-vaccine activist RFK Jr. expected to drop Democratic bid and launch independent or third-party run. RFK Jr. spent years stoking fear and mistrust of vaccines. These were the people hurt by his work. Now, in this section about conspiracy theories, I tried my absolute best to deduce RFK's beliefs from his own words. So for the sake of that, here's a clip of him on Bill Maher's podcast.
You give a group of people, a cohort of people, the medicine, and then you give a similarly situated cohort of people the placebo. And then you look at health outcomes over a 4 or 5 year period, because many of the impact of the outcomes are going to have long diagnostic horizons and long incubation periods, so you won't see them immediately. You need to do it. Anthony Fauci has said 8 years for a vaccine. You need to watch them for a while. Those studies have the only medicine that never gets tested are vaccines, and that is what I object to. It's not. I'm not saying that.
Not only the only one
effective. All I'm saying is let's test them the way that we test other medications. That does not seem unreasonable.
That is not unreasonable.
Well, that's my position. That's my position.
Well, great. The question for your campaign is...
I'm not talking about this stuff in my campaign. I'm just talking between you and me.
That's a ridiculous assumption. Of course you're going to have to talk about...
Well, if somebody asks me, I'm going to.
They're all going to ask you. Are you serious?
No, they
This is all
hear
they're going to ask you about. You think they're your friends who want to help you?
They don't want to hear
They want to go to the most vulnerable point, which is you're a kook because you don't believe in vaccines. That's not me talking. I don't believe that, but that's what they will.
But do you believe I don't believe in vaccines?
I believe you are more...
I just believe in science.
I understand, but
I'm gritting my teeth saying it, but Bill Maher is right. If RFK wants to not be reported as an anti-vaxxer by the news media, he needs to be less wishy-washy about his opinions. Both myself and Bill, as you saw from the clip, are seriously struggling to understand where exactly RFK stands on the matter. He very much can frame it in a better way. Sentiment against Big Pharma is very much in right now on both sides. I like to hope that we can all agree that the Sackler family deserves nothing short of hell for what they've done. Another conspiracy, as Kennedy is allegedly peddling, is that the coronavirus is a racial bioweapon. Second verse, same as the first. Let's go to the clip.
We've put hundreds of millions of dollars into ethnically targeted microbes. The Chinese have done the same thing. In fact, COVID-19, there's an argument that it is ethnically targeted. COVID-19 attacks certain races disproportionately. COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese.
Now, I feel it's important to note that RFK was likely drunk. According to one of the greatest New York Post articles of all time, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. press dinner explodes in war of words and farting. I don't usually give you all homework, but read this article. Let me just give you a little taste. Here it seems Deschert sensed the need for a new rhetorical tack and let rip a loud, prolonged fart while yelling as if to underscore his point, "I'm farting!" But to get back on track, One thing that I'll be seriously critical of RFK on is his opinion on Ukraine. I'm a firm believer that these anti-Ukraine Republicans are assets to the Kremlin, whether they want to be or not, though it seems increasingly apparent that they want to be. But again, let's go to RFK's own words on the issue.
This is a war that should have never happened. It's a war that Russians tried repeatedly to settle on terms that were very, very beneficial to Ukraine and us. The major thing they wanted was for us to keep NATO out of the Ukraine. The big military contractors want to add new countries to NATO all the time. Why? Because then that country has to conform its military purchases to NATO weapon specifications, which means certain companies, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, General Dynamics, Boeing, and Lockheed, get a trapped market.
Now, I respect his ability to call out the military-industrial complex because it is true that they use war and weapons sales to line their pockets. But at the same time, they want to add these countries to NATO because Russia will invade them if they don't. The war in Ukraine is an imperialist war of aggression started by a brutal dictator that wants to put the band back together, so to speak. He wants Ukraine for its agricultural prosperity, among other reasons, and is using propaganda that's being vastly helped by prominent Americans for his crazy-ass reasons. As I and many others believe, helping Ukraine now is the much cheaper of our options. Likely due to his opinions on the border, Kennedy has received millions from Trump donors, including Timothy Mellon. Kennedy's Super Pac, American Values 2024, has said that it will be spending $15 million to get Kennedy on the ballot in battleground states. This came under scrutiny by a report by the DNC last Friday that said that was illegal. The report explains that Kennedy's acceptance of non-monetary or in-kind donations violates federal law due to limits on donations from Super PACs. And in accepting these donations that are just paying for things that the campaign would have otherwise paid for if they had the money is breaking the law. And right while Kennedy was in controversy over Super PAC spending, his Super PAC bought this $7 million ad in last Sunday's Super Bowl.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy for me. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through? A man who's old enough to know
And young enough to do.
Well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you.
American Values 2024 is responsible for the content of this advertisement.
Doesn't it just make you nostalgic for a time you weren't alive during? Just me? Well, you'll notice that at the end of the ad it says American Values 2024 is responsible for the contents of this advertisement, and not something like, I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and I support this message. This is just another example of an in-kind donation that the report details. What's frustrating about this whole situation, though, is that RFK has some pretty good campaign promises. On his website, he said he would lobby for a bill to prevent student loans from having interest. Compared to the debt forgiveness, that's just a good way to actually curb the issue rather than just throwing money at it. Of course, loan forgiveness is good, but what about those that'll soon be applying for loans? In addition, he wants to make student loan debt dischargeable when filing for bankruptcy. He wants to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. He directly addressed stopping the school-to-prison pipeline and wants to reform the police rather than just giving them more or less money. He wants to fight union busting and said that Amazon and Starbucks were problem companies. He wants to cut the military budget. He's against government surveillance and could be our best bet in the Oval Office if we want the Patriot Act repealed. Now, of course, these are all campaign promises, and we have to take them with a massive grain of salt. Also, they come with the baggage that we just discussed. Having a president that's going to throw Ukraine under the bus like that could be a serious disaster for global affairs. I feel as though with RFK, there's a lot to like and a lot to dislike. He's talked about his support for the Green New Deal, yet still gets millions of dollars from Trump donors. If anyone out of these three can actually reach across the aisle, it's him. Though I think some of his opinions, such as his thoughts on Ukraine, are stupid. And even for me, some of the conspiracy theories he gives credence to are ridiculous. It's pretty easy, though, to understand why this guy's so open to conspiracy theories, as he bore witness to one of the greatest conspiracies our nation has ever seen, which I will go very deep into one day. At the end of the day, independent candidates tend to go this way. They come out strong from the gate with people frustrated with the status quo, but then lose steam when the actual election rolls around and people realize that they prefer the Democrat or the Republican to what the independent believes. Protest votes and his last name are likely what carry RFK's polling right now. Whether we like it or not, we're going to watch those two old men enter a tender embrace.